Hello, everyone, and happy, glorious Wednesday. It is a gorgeous day here in Southern California. I don't know if other folks are joining us from other parts in the country, but as we know, with the internet, we are connected. So, welcome to all those outside of Los Angeles. Um, for the first time joining us, my name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASBDC offers no-cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicating to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. Well, good morning, Lori. I'm excited. I heard correctly, we're mixing it up a little bit today, so I'm excited for our new mix today.
We are. I always try to have fun, as you know, and I always take you down journeys in many different directions. So, with no further ado, let me get talking about the different guests that are coming up throughout November so we can get started with today's show. Okay. I always use this platform as a way to say what all webinars I'm having for the month. And I've also scheduled into December, but this is all of November. So Sadie is going to put the long list into the chat so you can sign up. Please do consider the CFO series. I'm really urging the necessity for people to have a strong understanding of their numbers. We're getting ready to close out the year. Closing out the year is a great time to reflect upon where the business model's going, if it still makes sense, and if maybe you need to ask Santa Claus for a brand new business model and try something new when you start New Year's Day with a new look into things. And the numbers definitely help you to know if that could be the truth. Okay, coming up in November, I actually realized when I was looking at the lineup for November and I'll adding the other dates, we're really taking a lot of roads down, understanding different aspects or disciplines within a company. Tanya Kelly is the owner of Double A Solutions. It's accounting and tax. And I've asked her to come on again, once again, getting close to the end of the year. So I want to talk about, what you need to be doing to prepare for taxes next year. If you're in a certain type of legal structure, such as an S Corp, you'll need to look at whether you need a reasonable salary. Also, get into any decisions that you can be making now to reduce your tax burden, how to get your documents together correctly. So, really, whether you're just starting out, a sole prop, a corporation, we're going to just kind of touch on let's think about it now. I like to talk to people about preparing for taxes next year because I know most people are like, oh my God, that's next year. I'm not even going to think about it. But after you go through the holidays and you start to look at the numbers, you don't remember things as much as you do now. So it's better to organize and get your categories together while you still recall what that transaction was. It'll make it a lot easier. I've asked Samara to come back on. She was just on maybe 3 weeks ago. We were talking about independent contractors and the new requirement for specific contracts to be in place, which started January 1st in the state of California. And we were talking a bit more about also AB5, and there was some other things that were changing in the law that we didn't get a chance to discuss. So I wanted her to come on to continue that conversation. Whenever Samara comes on, we always go full force the whole time and leave many things unsaid. So I said she had to come back on. Janice Graham is a business owner and her company is leaving in style. She talks about business strategy and also succession planning. I haven't had anybody on the show before to talk about this topic, yet I've had people ask, if I wanted to start a company and eventually XYZ, leave it to a kid, what have you, what do I need to look at now? What do I need to be aware of now? So when I had her referred to me, I thought this would be a great subject that we have not yet discussed. Okay, Got a interesting Lori's Corner for today. You know me, where is my frequent flyer saying, preach, Lori? I know you guys say that all the time. But in Lori's Corner, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today. And that is because we got a really cool guest and we're going to have a different conversation today. So here we go. So I have decided that I am going to talk about a bunch of old time quotes, a bunch of old time quotes that I think resonate today. You know, so many times in my own life, especially when certain things are happening and I want to have a better understanding, I find if I go back to those that came before us, it could be centuries, it could be decades, what have you, and look at their words, I find there's so much truism in them today. Now, some of you may be familiar with Zig Ziglar, some people may not. He was a big deal when I was younger, and he was sales motivational speaker. And one of the things that I like that he used to say is if people like you, they'll listen to you. But if they trust you, they'll do business with you. I think we are not really focused on this concept of providing trust to our customers as we were back in the day. I have noticed that when purchasing with smaller companies, I'm using smaller companies, you really have to have more discernment, a word I brought up last week, because it's so easy to put up a website, put up a Shopify cart, suddenly you're putting your credit card in, you're buying something. It maybe ships, it maybe doesn't. You maybe get an email back. I've had to purchase a lot of different things recently, so I've done research and got them from companies I didn't know. And I got to tell you, 50% of the time, I didn't even get an email back from some of these companies. And then I went back and tried to purchase from larger companies just because they had the processes in place to respond. So when I saw this quote, I was like, you know what? We as small companies have such a great opportunity to do business with consumers, but we got to make sure they trust us. And I think the more that you're going to get the ease of getting into business and overnight having a shopping cart, the more that people are going to have these kind of experience and the more that trust is going to be important. Now, Sun Tzu's, which I probably said wrong, one of the favorite quotes from him is, in the midst of chaos, there is always opportunity. And you guys have heard me say that before. I think we get short-sighted to say that it's, just so awful, you can't succeed, you can't do this, you can't whatever, fill in the blank. As you get older, I'm old, right? I'm definitely on in the older years from when I was 20 and 30 and started my company. You start to reflect. And when I was younger, I felt like I would listen to the news, if you will, and it would be like, oh, the economy's doing this. It's a bad time to do this. It's a bad time to do that. And I would buy into that belief, that statement. And suddenly all my thoughts were around lack limitation, right? And as you get older, you're like, there's always chaos. There's just always chaos. And there's always opportunity. So the statement I want to make on this is look for the opportunity in the chaos because believe me, it exists. It definitely exists. Socrates, the only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing. This is another thing. I don't mean to do age reflection here, but these do kind of resonate with me for that reason. The older I got, the more I don't know. The more I don't know. When, and it's that old thing. I remember when I was a kid, people say, yeah, the young ones, they know everything. The older you get, you don't know. And I'm like, oh my God, here I am sitting on the other side saying the same damn thing. That's when you go, okay, my mother was kind of right. That my mother was kind of right. But I think right now, more than ever, and I'm not talking about youth or age, we need to come from a position that we know nothing because every single thing around us is being questioned, and I think it will continue to do so. And all I'm saying is this, if you come from a position of saying, I know nothing, it makes you question and makes you question with the ability to look outside what your current belief system is. If you believe and you've got it narrowed down and this is the way the world works, or this is the way the customer works, or this is the way the company works, you won't see the little hidden clues. So if you come from a position of I know nothing, let me show, that's where wisdom is. Wisdom comes from a position of saying I know nothing. So I invite you to wake up one day, look at your company, how you're operating it. Instead of coming from a position of arrogance, I got it all figured out, come from a position of humility where you know nothing, and you'll be really surprised at what you may find out that you weren't aware of, what you may hear whispering to you. And the last thing is in the same concept, the same vein of thought. Lao Tzu, who says, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." And this one resonated with me for years. I had so many labels upon myself. I'm a business person. I'm this. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. When I was like, well, you know what? Let me wake up and see what I'm going to be. It really changed everything. So I think, I think it was Deepak Chopra that says the minute we name it, we negate it. Could be wrong on giving credit to where it needs to be, but it's this concept is when we start determining what label we need to be, we're really looking at what we want to achieve based on a belief, a society of belief. If we just say, hey, you know what, let me go forth and let go of anything and just see what I become. I know what I've become is definitely more who I am, but it definitely is not what I thought I should have been. So that's Lori's Corner, and that's Lori's words of wisdom. I truly hope that maybe even just one word I said resonated with you in some way. And this was a prelude to my guest. I am so excited to have Michelle Perkins back on the show. Limit Free Life is a coaching and personal development company that helps men and women create financial prosperity and freedom. Freedom is like my favorite word in the whole world, freedom, while doing work they love. Michelle Perkins, the company's founder, specializes on helping individuals lift barriers to success by uncovering underlying money beliefs, illuminating what's driving money behavior, and paving the way for a better relationship with money and increased wealth. Michelle, welcome back to the show. I'm so happy to have you back on.
Thank you, Lori. I'm so happy to be here. I was so excited to reconnect with you. I'd been on a while ago and you've been on my show and it's been a while. And yeah, I loved Lori's Corner this morning. It was right up my alley. And yeah, really appreciate this.
I told you I had a special Lori's card. And when we communicated again, I was amazed that it's been almost 2 years. I thought it was just like last year. And then I looked up and it was like been 2 years since you've been on the show. So I'm very excited to have you on. I think that a lot of times you don't have these kind of dialogues on finance business shows, right? They kind of tend to go in their own lane and they don't launch over to each, but they're so important. So I think it's a great discussion. But before we launch right into the middle of it, Michelle, let our audience get to know you. I bet you when you were growing up in high school, you didn't think this is what you were gonna be doing. I can pretty much say that's true. You didn't go, when you're growing up, you didn't go, I
Uh,
think I'm gonna do podcast on relationships with money. Okay. So there's a story that got you here to first your understanding, because you can't speak on this type of topic until you have a visceral understanding that came to you in somehow. I think that is the interesting story behind the story. So I'm just going to give it to you to take it from there.
Thank you. Yeah, you're so right. No, I had no thoughts of doing any of this at all. I was a criminal justice major in school, and I wanted to help the world and defend the poor and all kinds of things, and do court and prison reform, which I could talk for the rest of the hour about what's going on now and how that would have played in. But um, so I diverted for many reasons. Part of it was a money issue that caused me, when I got done with school, the economy wasn't great. There weren't a lot of jobs. And so I went ahead and I had been doing a little bit of white collar crime investigative work with the Attorney General's office as an
Okay.
internship. And they said, hey, if you have any interest in this, you should go learn something about accounting, because that's what you're gonna be looking at people's
Right.
books.
Right.
So I didn't know what accounting was really. I'd never thought about it before, but I went ahead and I took a class, this really speaks to the world of education. But there was a woman teaching who was so enthusiastic about accounting and so leaning into like the mission of it, to create factual disclosures for investors. And so it was almost like there was this social good to accounting that I'd never
Oh,
thought of before
okay.
that drew me in, which I mean, if it hadn't been for her, I don't know if I ever would have gone into any of this. So then I decided to go ahead. I liked it, and I went ahead and got an MBA and did all the, classes I needed to sit for the CPA exam. And then I was on a different, different
Yeah.
trajectory. And I did business consulting for a while. I did business consulting in the corporate world, and then I went into finance and accounting and worked in the entertainment companies, doing that. You don't need to know any of this except that I thought I was a smart money person because I knew a lot.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, I mean, I studied finance, I understood accounting. So there was this belief I had that that's all you need to be a smart, wealthy woman in the world. And so I was kind of, I was helping my husband, who is an entrepreneur, he's a dentist, and I was running his practices and doing all kinds of things. And we made a big transition. And I did a lot of things wrong financially. Like I took us down, a really sad path of using all of our savings and going into debt to help support his new businesses. And I had to stop myself and just say, at a bad point, I had to stop and just, I was getting depressed and say, what am I doing? I mean, I know this stuff. Like, how am I putting our family in such jeopardy when I'm technically a financial person? And that's when I started going. I had a coach, and I went to some conferences and learned about money mindset. And that was like, it changed my life really, because I was already doing coaching and career transition coaching and business coaching. But I had no idea that people's their emotions and their psychology and their belief systems are what's driving the decisions, including people who know enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lack of knowledge, it was a lack of understanding of myself.
I absolutely love that story, and I'm so glad we talked about it because there's several things I want to unpack from it, especially for our audience to take note on it. So, first of all, I love that you went down the road to show the amount of financial training that you had. Because many times, like I said, when people speak about the beliefs, the mental beliefs, the emotional about money, they're kind of going at it from a perspective, and I hate this word, but if people like relate to what I'm saying, like, oh, it's all woo-woo, right? All this is emotional woo-woo.
Yeah.
Where you're saying, and I people are calling it the new woo now, which I think the new woo is kind of like, okay, maybe there's some validity to it, right? The new woo, right? But what you have encapsulated is not only that there is something within our, I'll just say it, mindset, to make it simple, that kind of mirrors what we're going to see in our world financially, but also even having the financial knowledge to make the right choices still led you down that path. Now, another thing that I don't want to go without unpacking here, Michelle, because this is something I don't know how to say it other than it breaks my heart. So I'm going to just say it that way. And my audience knows because I say this all the time. You spoke of how you inadvertently ended up taking your husband and his business down a wrong pathway where you put the family savings at risk to run their business. I am seeing on a daily basis, because of all the clients I see through the SBDC with one-on-ones, right? It's the smallest companies, the individual who is bought into this, you just got to be passionate, you just got to do this, and they are literally putting on their credit card money they believe is growing the business, but it's actually paying past bills because they're not profitable enough. So I am going to summarize what I'm saying, and I'm paraphrasing, but Michelle, I'm going to have you comment on, and please correct me if I'm not hitting it on cue as you see it. I always say that it's a combination of intellect, intelligence, knowledge, wisdom, all those things. What are the right things? What are the clues? What am I supposed to be seeing? And then it's also the emotional side as well. When you combine wisdom and knowledge, going back to my quotes, I know nothing, with also a strong foundation in your beingness, if I can just say that, you have a winning combination. And that's what I was very excited to have you on the show today to communicate communicate to the audience, I am giving the stage totally back to you, Michelle. Go wherever you would like with what I said or what you'd like to go to next.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you for being, the fact that you understand this so well is of so much benefit to your listeners and the people that you're working with, because without this understanding, I really think, it's like you move forward and you move back and you move forward and you move back, and it just doesn't get you ultimately where you want to go. So this was a surprise to me. I had no idea that your mindset or your relationship with money. I thought it was woo woo. I was like, I can't talk about this stuff. And as a CPA, and
Yeah.
but now I can't not talk about it. It's all I talk about. But I just didn't know myself well enough, and I don't think any of us do, because we're operating from early belief systems. We're operating from what we call knowledge, from our parents, from our education, from churches, from whatever was happening in our growing up in our early years. And so that messaging, I'll give you a great example. I'm in this group where we read and reread Wallace Wattles' Science of Getting Rich, Science of Being Great, of the whole series of books. So, a little more of that philosophy that you were talking about. It's very old, which, it was written like in 1910 or something. So it's kind of shocking as you read it, at the insights that he had about this. But it definitely is about, your thoughts are things, and manage your thoughts, and, take right action. Nothing ever works without taking action. But everything has to sort of be preceded by managing your thoughts, which our thoughts create our emotions as well. So if you feel emotionally dysregulated, if you're in fear, if your business is causing you stress and you're losing sleep, this is an emotional reaction to certain thoughts that you're saying to yourself, and so it's very easy then to stay in sort of a fear mode, and fear mode is never good for business. I mean, it's natural, it happens, we lose our best customer, and it's a normal reaction to go into fear. But what we don't realize is that we can stop and sort of analyze this and have the awareness to know, this is the emotion I'm feeling, these are the thoughts I'm thinking, and I have to first calm my emotional state down, and then I can make some reasonable decisions. I feel like in business, we make a lot of decisions based on fear, and we're very reactive because we don't have the knowledge or the discipline to stop and, make no decision until we've given ourselves time to, so that's one piece of it, is the emotional dysregulation, but causing our decisions. But the other piece is just, it's not really knowing who we are with money. We all have sort of an archetype. I do an archetypes assessment because it's the easiest way to understand it initially, and then you can go deeper. But, in my case, my top archetype is a nurturer. So I wanted my husband's business to be, I wanted the stress off of him. So I took it on, except I didn't really have the control over the decisions that were being made. So it was kind of ridiculous. But in my mind, I'm like, how can I make, not disrupt the kids' lives, keep them in private school, do all of these things that really weren't doable with the cash flow that we had coming in. And so, it was a period of time before I realized that my need to nurture everybody, and my identification with that as who I am, and a little arrogance, like, I know things, I'll figure it out, I'll make it work. Um, that awareness now, when I go into major nurturer mode, I stop myself and I say, can I really do this, and is it wise, and does it make sense? And that translates into clients. If you feel like you want to discount your work for your, so more clients can be helped. I mean, that's a very simplistic example, but that's the type of thing a nurturer is going to do almost automatically.
Yep, totally get it. So I'm going to go and unpack some of the things because, as you can see, I'm scribbling notes over here. There's some key things that we can actually talk with our audience and give them some tools, if you will, because that's the common thing that people say. So one of the things that I say, and it's amazing to me how much our language is similar as well, because we really don't know each other, but it's like a best friend talks just like I always say that my goal in any situation is to get to a position where I can respond rather than react. There is a huge difference between a response and a reaction. And one of the things that you said is, like, a customer leaves, you got to get to a calm emotional state to make that decision, because fear is not going to position you to make good decisions. However, this is the words that come to my mind. Fear in the moment is a runaway friggin' train.
Yeah, very true. Very
It's
true.
so hard. It's like, telling somebody that they're gonna not eat brownies and making them stop on that chocolate brownie that they feel like they will die for another chocolate brownie. Unless you have a force that grabs it from your hand, that brownie may be eaten. So, Michelle, how do you stop eating the brownies? How do you get out of that state? I think if we don't talk about this big elephant in the room, everything we say is just words. Can we capture the big elephant right at the beginning?
Yeah, yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I've worked with people who said, well, we'll do a process to kind of improve their relationship with money. And their expectation is, okay, after 3 months or 6 months or whatever, I'm going to be a different person. I'll never have these problems again.
Oh, no.
And that's not true,
No,
sadly. I wish I could
no, it's
guarantee
not.
that,
It's
but
not. It's a lifetime thing. Yeah, no,
it
it's
is
not.
a
I can't.
lifetime practice. It
Yep.
really isn't any different than how we eat, how we exercise. There are days when it's just not going to go well, and we have to just, one of the big problems that we have is the way we talk to ourselves. I had a financial therapist on my podcast, and she did a whole show on this because when we beat ourselves up over those days that where we do make a bad decision or we do eat all the brownies in the room, I mean, we can't linger on that too long, and we can't berate ourselves and create shame we create a lot of shame for ourselves around money.
Mhm.
And that has completely the opposite effect of creating a good relationship. So it's a practice. It's a learned practice. Sometimes we have to really dig into our old beliefs around money and do a lot of work to shift them. And you will bounce back. We're like thermostats. We're going to go back to a set point all the time. And that happens for business owners with money too. You reach your financial goal, and then there's almost like this uncomfortableness of going past that. And you might do it and then you might fall right back to where your comfort zone is. There's a lot of internal stuff. We like to be safe. The survival part of our brain likes to keep us safe, whether that means, and oftentimes being safe is not what we say we want. We want to be $1 million business owner, but we feel pretty comfortable and know what to do at the $200,000 mark. We kind of like uncertain about that whole $1 million mark. So it's awareness mostly. And I think we have to do a lot of things to create more awareness and to like, really develop that awareness and then practices. So, I almost hate saying this at this point. I say it so often, and I feel like people want to roll their eyes. But morning routines, gratitude journaling, at the end of the week, logging your successes for your business, even if it was like the worst week ever. Some things went well. Maybe you just handled it okay. Maybe you didn't lose sleep. Maybe it was actually a business thing. I think there's a lot of priming our brain that we have to do. So when we want to say to ourselves, I'm just a loser in my business or whatever, we have to quickly come back we have to first know that's not productive to be saying that to ourselves, and then come back with something better to say. So there's a lot of unpacking your negative self-talk, your negative beliefs, and rewriting them and literally practice saying them. I mean, we can rewire our brain over time, but it takes a lot of effort, and it takes saying things that you may not even really fully believe and writing things that you don't fully believe and having a bigger vision. I think it's super important to have a business vision that you can, oh, I have mine right here. Um, and I have to go back in the morning sometimes and reread it because sometimes you just want to go back to bed. Things are not going well and you're not thinking straight. And so if you go back and you reread your vision, you remember why the heck you're doing this thing, and you remind yourself of the things you've done well, because that creates more momentum for that. And you give yourself a lot of grace as you try to navigate getting, a better relationship with money.
Yep.
I
Yep.
don't want to lose this one thought because you brought up that slide that talked about people need to know, like, and trust you.
Yep. Yep.
And I wrote myself a note because it's the same with your relationship with money. I find that most people who have a poor relationship with money don't trust themselves with money. They don't trust themselves with financial decisions. And so, getting to know your money better, doing exactly what, I think you talk about a lot, which is tracking things and paying attention to it and trying not to avoid your money situation, good or bad. I think these are really, the more you know your money, and the more even small, very small actions that you take, the more you'll trust your decision making. And that will also bring about some improvements in how you.
Absolutely. Oh my God, I got three things that I'm hoping that I can hold on well enough to restate them and then pass them to you. So they're three different thoughts, but they come together. One of the things you talked about is when you have this reaction rather than a response, I find that at the end of the day, with myself and I believe others, what we really need and we want is to feel safe. Now, safe means different things to different people, right? But it's our survival instinct that comes into play. So, one of the things I always have to do if I am feeling the money pull, I grew up in a family that thought it was still the Depression, money doesn't grow on trees, put money between the steak in the freezer. Yes, she did do that. Okay. So, this is my background, right? And so I was always going to not have enough money, right? But anyway, so I resonate with this, but I always have to, even though it doesn't even make sense, I have to go down and go, okay, wait a minute. Do you have dinner tonight? Do you have dinner tomorrow? Can you pay your rent? I have to go down to those basics because then I stop this visceral, I'm not safe response. Okay, I don't want to just leave it at that, Michelle. I'm giving you another huge elephant and I'm building a huge elephant right now. Okay. So, knowing its safety, I'm going to go now to another end of the spectrum, right? As you said, with your children in private care, it's just not doable with our cash flow. We just can't afford it. I see so many people that financially the numbers are not saying they can afford this, but they will not acknowledge or give it up like this is going to mysteriously be paid for. So there has to be some reality. I always say being delusionally ignorant never brings about any kind of benefit. And then the third, and this is the huge elephant, I'm bringing the last bit of the elephant. Michelle, so many times people, and it's things you said, I want to be the $1 million company. And those who know me, my frequent flyers here, know I always say, but can you buy a quart of milk at the end of the day? It is my belief, and I could be wrong, and you in the audience can tell me if you think I'm wrong on this. I think a lot of times those who feel like they got to be 1 million, 2 million, put in the number, are doing it because that's what they think they should be to be classified as success. They would be just fine, maybe even having a smaller budget, living in a smaller place, and just having money to buy a quart of milk and be happy. I think if they just stripped away all the things they believe they should be, which is what I've done in my life, because people say, oh, Lori, you actually made it to the top. I said, no, I gave up and found happiness instead. That was a lot, Michelle, but you saw where I was going. I'm going to it's really your words restated. I'm going to throw it back to you.
Well, I love what you just said, and this is going to make me forget the earlier question, so I'll have to ask you again. But what you just said about reaching the top, like what the heck does that even mean?
I know.
People don't define their top for one thing. And so maybe your top is earning, less than you think you need, being more profitable. It doesn't matter if you make $10 million a year if you're spending $10
No.
million a year or more. And that happens a lot. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the really important things too is, well, really to define what success is for you because it's very, very individual.
Hmm.
And it may change over time too. What you thought was success in your business. My dad did this. He had a super successful orthodontic practice, and the more successful it got, the less he liked it, and he changed his career altogether. He just, he had a complete career switch. So I think we have to stay on top of ourselves, be aware, and we need to understand our numbers. You don't if you don't even know that you're spending everything you're making, and just every month it's like, why do I have no money? I'm so frustrated. I can't do this. I'm a bad business owner. All of this negative messaging that is as simple as just not knowing your numbers. go in there and cut a few things so that you have some profit coming out of this. And if you can't do that, relook at how you're earning your revenue, but know what's going on. The money always tells you a story. And that's the other thing, is to understand your own money story, because we all have our money stories, and our money stories, a lot of times, I'll tell you a perfect example that came up in the Wallace Waddles group I'm in this morning. Woman who is exceptionally successful and has been for a long time, really smart. She owns a very unique business in the like campaign sector where she does, she helps politicians. And she said something about her beliefs always being, she had to show her P&Ls to somebody. And you know how most of us are like, ooh, I don't want to show my P&Ls. It'll show how little I'm making. Well, in her case, it's the opposite. She doesn't want to show her P&Ls because she makes so much money. And her belief system said, if people know how much money I make, they'll they'll try to cheat me out of things, they'll hate me, they won't want to be, have anything to do with me. And I found that so fascinating, because most of the time we're worried about not having enough,
Yeah,
but the
yeah.
people who have more than enough have their own set of beliefs that are impacting their lives. So it's not a money fix either. It's a mindset fix. It's not like the more money, I mean, we all think, well, as soon as I have more money, all these problems are gonna go
Yeah.
away. But we still bring ourselves with us. So we have to, like in any relationship. So we have to be very aware. And okay, let's go back to your earlier question.
Yeah, let's go into the safety, because what I see is I see
Safety. Yeah.
people, this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They don't know their numbers. They get into debt to pay past expenses because they're not really making enough money and they don't realize it. So then they're getting so high in debt and so overspent that, of course, then they're getting into panics because they're not making their bills. Then the safety comes and it just keeps tumbling and tumbling and tumbling.
Yeah.
This is, if you were to say, Lori, what is the one thing you see? That's what I see. And then they listen to some entrepreneur guru and says, you just got to be passionate. And so they get up and they put their head down and they do it again until, and this is what I see, Michelle, this is going into the legal side of my life too, till they get to bankruptcy. When it finally cuts off, I saw somebody that I told 3, 4 years ago, their business model was not going to make it. And they now have a loan out on their parents' home, which is being repossessed right now. It is just tear breaking. But I told them for 3 years the same thing. But the next deal was going to do it. So go ahead, go ahead. I see
Well,
you got it.
I love your point, because I had a bankruptcy attorney on my show the other day, and oh my gosh, he blew my mind because he was so nonchalant about the whole thing. And he was saying the biggest problem is people wait too long because there's such a negative connotation on bankruptcy, which I too have. I would avoid it at all costs and, take a second mortgage or whatever. And he just turned that whole thing around, because you really do need to separate your personal and your business finances. And most entrepreneurs don't. And it's sort of because it starts out that way. And then this is the other piece of the puzzle, is habit. And so we get comfortable with things, like I said, but bad habits, we also, what you do in your first year of business shouldn't be what you're doing in your 10th year of business.
And it's so true. So true. Yes.
But yeah, the safety factor is, I mean, that is, we have to look at that too, to see what is real and what is imagined. We can imagine horrible things happening that aren't, that's not serving us, because it's not even real. It's just a fear that we have. And then there's the more legitimate things, like I can't buy that bottle of milk at the end of the month. That's that's not a fear, that's a reality.
That's a
And
reality. Yeah.
yeah. And so, we kind of need to be able to discern that and understand the difference and take action. We do listen to a lot of people and we watch a lot of people. That's the other thing in today's world, the comparative aspects of business and all the people. I mean, I go on Instagram, I see 26 coaching people telling me that, it should be easy to make whatever amount of money,
Right, right.
and it's not easy. And
No.
that's really doing people a disservice, because then you're like, I'm bad at this because it's not easy for me. And so I really don't like all the messaging out there about, I love for people to be passionate and love their work, but there are times in life when that is not what it's about. It's about putting some money in the bank so that you feel safer. Exactly,
Yeah.
to your point. It doesn't mean it's
Yep.
going to be like that forever, but we do part of calming down and not being emotionally dysregulated is having an emergency fund, is doing some of the, having your line of credit or whatever it is that's going to help you to feel like you can, operate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is over the top agreement on what the messaging is. I feel like over the years, once again, been around for a long time, it's like the nuts and bolts of building a business have gone out of style in the
Yeah.
messaging, and almost like anything and you start it and you're going to make money. It's like you forgot that, well, it's like driving a car without forgetting that the mechanics have to be in place to make the car run or it's not going anywhere. That was a really good analogy. I like that one.
What it is.
But yeah, that I feel like that's getting lost for some reason, and I feel sad for those younger than me that didn't get the original training. Also, one of my biggest jokes, but truth in it, is that I see how business models don't. They're somewhat just are not going to succeed. They're just not going to succeed. And I see people that will leave a 20-year marriage over a small thing and hold on a business model until the friggin' grave, and that is the weirdest thing. And I agree with you on the bankruptcy part because I've been through bankruptcies and closing down with clients right over the years. And recognizing it soon enough gives you more choices during the bankruptcy or the closing down. So you have some money left over. And I'll tell you what, I've never gone through, and I've gone through a few of them in my life with clients. Every single one of them were happier on the other side because they've been so friggin' weighted down by the worry and stress that once they got through the process and got on the other side, all they had relief, and many started businesses that were completely different and now are happy and prosperous.
You couldn't have said it better. And that's exactly what he was saying, is the relief that people feel there, is just so enormous. And so, I'm not a proponent of, go file bankruptcy, but if you
Right.
need to, you need to. And the stigma around it shouldn't be there actually.
Um,
And yeah, the nuts and bolts around finance, absolutely. I think a lot of business owners are so wrapped up in their idea or their service or their product that some of that goes by the wayside. And it's more of a timing thing. I feel like if you know it in advance, you'll use those skills early on. If you have to get to a crisis point and then learn the nuts and bolts, you don't really want to do that. But again, time, what are you going to spend your time on? And you really have to spend a little time. That's building a relationship with money, is to spend a little time with it. And so whatever it takes, a weekly money date, whatever it is, you really, that's part of the investment. And it is your time, but it's worth it. So.
Let's dig into it a little bit to help the audience. If we were trying to find out what is our beliefs about money, what
Mhm.
is our relationship with money, any kind of little bits of information that we can, even if we say a couple sentences that everybody in the audience can do today to start to become, I love your word because I think this is key, awareness. Once we have an awareness, we can change. If we don't have an awareness, we cannot. And my guess, and you see people all the time and have these conversations, most people do not even have a simple awareness of what their relationship with money actually is.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I do have an assessment that will help with understanding these archetypes. That's always where I start. But even if you, and there are archetypes who are there's ones that are very responsible with money. There are others that are not, they want to live life and have fun, and all of it is good, but it's just a balance. And so you want to know who you are with money. But I think for your listeners, the first thing to do is, and this is how I try to explain your relationship with money, because I found people weren't really getting that. Like, what the heck is that? So if you think of your money as a relationship, so imagine how you are in relationship with other people. So think of your friends or your pet or your child. What do you do with them? You you stay, you stay in touch with them. You talk to them, you relate to them, you want to be knowledgeable about what's going on in their lives. That's the same with money. That's the part that we don't do. So at a bare minimum, just start paying attention to, how do I relate with money? Do I only think about it when I go to my tax accountant at the end of the year? Is that when I look at my P&Ls and that's when I have a conversation? It's too late for tax strategy then. This isn't the best relationship. The best relationships have a lot of interaction. And so that's, and then I would do a little exercise where you track for a week or whatever what you're saying to yourself about money.
So
what are the messages that you're sending to your own brain? Maybe you're hearing them outside, but how are you interpreting them and processing them? And what are you saying to yourself? So keep a running list. When you say, 10 times a day, I can't afford this. I don't like that word anyway. I always like to say this isn't in my budget right now. Because the minute you say I can't afford this, you're just in a scarcity mindset. So I want you to list out everything that you're saying to yourself about money. That will reveal a lot about how you think about it. Um, and then to actually look at those statements that you're saying to yourself and put them in a column, and in a next column, write a better statement. I mean, just like when you say I can't afford this, change that to this isn't in my budget right now. It'll be in next year's budget or whatever, something just slightly more positive. We can get very, very negative about us and our money. Um,
yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of other, I like affirmations. I like journaling about your money and actually talking to money as if it's a person. I'll give you one other exercise I do with people, but write a letter to your money. Tell money how you feel about it. I
I
mean,
like that.
do you really dislike money because it creates a lot of conflict and stress in your life? Or do you see money as a vehicle to growing your business or having a happier life? Well, how do you even think about it? Most of us don't give this any time. And then if you really want to have fun, have money write a letter back to you.
Oh, I love this. Oh, guys, you got to do this. Sounds like fun.
Let money tell you, and you're going to be like, I don't know, lady, you're weird.
You're
But if
not my friend anymore, money. You never were, and I didn't even realize it.
I know, but think about what money's going to say to you. How
I
come
know
you're paying
that's
to
what
me
I'm
no attention? Like, how
saying.
come you don't try to keep me around? I don't know what it's going to say, but when I did it, that's the kind of thing that I was hearing myself.
I think it's going to say, why didn't you take Lori's CFO class, like she said, and learn how to deal with your numbers? I think that's what your money's going to tell you guys. I absolutely love it. A couple things that I thought about, and I'm not, trying to say we shouldn't have credit cards in our money systems, but from the original days when everybody just exchanged cash or, chickens for horses or whatever,
Yeah.
we have gotten so distant from our money that we can borrow it on a credit card, we pay it over here. We don't have the understanding of our number because we've actually gotten, I think, too distant from it. Bringing it back, that's what knowing your numbers does. It brings it back together versus this distance. But I also wanted to comment two things that I thought was interesting. I think one of the things I did when I was younger, I was a big fan of Anthony Robbins. I'm not saying anything against Anthony Robbins. I still have a lot of respect for it, but I'm saying he was big then, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I would do the journaling and I would doing that. I'm going to make a million or whatever the number was, right? That never reflected with me because it was always this goal outside of me that was based on this class I was hyped up to take, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that changed for me, not in just money, but in my life completely, is I started looking more at what did I want to experience? Not didn't what I want to go, what do I want my life experience to be? And someone else said this. I can't give credit because I don't recall, but I had this expression about money and it resonated so much and it became visceral to me. So I got to make this one little statement. For many years, and people kind of know, some people know this about me, but I was a rock climber and I was also a high altitude climber. So when you're at 18,000 feet, you're freezing your you know what off. You have no heat. You have no, it's suffering max, right? So when I heard this statement about money, it resonated to me and became my way of looking at money. Money does not buy happiness, it brings comfort, it buys comfort. And I tied in the money buys comfort. It's just energy in a vehicle. And what do I want to experience? And what's interesting is, I think, I'm guessing, because, who says what I would have done, but if I would have looked to some of the purchases, including the properties and stuff I own and the vehicles
Yeah.
I own back during the Anthony Robbins, I would have had to have a Ferrari. Now I have a 2002 Jeep that I keep redoing because I don't want a new Jeep. I just want my old Jeep to run new. And so it really was like, well, I don't want a new Jeep. I can afford one, but I don't want one. I love my old Jeep. And it allowed me to once again use money to make me happy on who I am. I think so many people make money try to be what they believe they should be. I'm sure you come across that all the time.
100%. I totally agree. And when, as soon as the word should comes out of your
Yeah.
mouth, I think, and I agree with you. Again, it goes back to defining what is success for you. A lot
Mm.
of times it isn't money. I mean, it's enough money, or, depending on what you want. What is it that you want? And I think most people can't answer that question. It's actually easier. And I think that I love Tony Robbins back in the day too, but he kind of appealed to this um idea that I want more, but
Right.
never really defining what more is for the individual. I look at Grant Cardone. I don't want a plane. He's always sitting in his plane going, look at my plane. I mean, no offense if you like Grant Cardone,
No,
that,
I don't want to
but
play either. Yeah, I
um,
agree.
but I really don't want a plane, and I don't want to be told I should want a plane.
Right.
And so, it really, um, who are you? What do you want? These are questions that I've asked in my coaching with career transitioners too. They know what they don't want, and you may know what you don't want with money. You don't want to be stressed. You don't want to lose sleep. You don't want to be in debt. You don't want to, whatever it is, figuring out what you don't want can be, it's not that it's so positive, but it's a good, it's good information to know, okay, so I don't want that. What do I want? But it is perfectly normal for people to not have this clear vision and to not really know what they want. And spending some time on that is really, really important. You can also do like a needs and wants budget. So what do you need? I mean, that one's, you can use historical data, you can know what you're doing, you can fill that one out. But if you actually put a cost to what you want and add that up, I think most of the time it's less than we think.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I had a boyfriend at one time many years ago, and I never even noticed this about myself. One time I was saying something, he says, "Well, then you will buy it." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You said the word need. When you say need, you buy it. When you say want, you don't." So it really made me understand the difference between needs and wants. And, going back to combining a couple things, my corner about opportunity is in chaos. And then a combination of this statement that you're seeing on social media about all the, ways to make money, but not being really clear on what money you can make out of that. And I love this because I can cross the bridge between talking about the relationship with money and also finance and business with you. And that's what makes it so fun.
Yeah.
Just like if I was said to you, I am going to be a school teacher, but I want to make $1 million like a rock star, you would say, wait a minute, this profession really has a cap kind of here, and this profession, it's a given. It knows it's the reality of penciling it out.
Right.
Think there are a million, beyond a million, a trillion billion ways to make money, and there's more ways than ever before. But each idea has a certain limit that you can make the money on. And you have the outliers that, are social media and suddenly make a million, but it's like the one person who is actually the famous actor but all the other people that are working in the restaurant, right? So I think we also have to have reality on what we love doing, what we want to do. What kind of income does that have potential for really? And how does that fit in with the experiences we want to have? When we bring all that around in awareness, reality, and understanding our belief, I think we've got the winning combination.
Mm.
Going to
I
hear what you
I
like on that.
totally agree with you, and you're right about, understanding the business model, and your business model, is that even going to work? So, but I love what you just said. I think that's brilliant, and it's more complicated than just following a formula.
Yeah.
And you just brought this up, but I feel like we live in a world that has more opportunity than ever, but we also live in a world where the marketing messages are just coming at us. So, and I did it myself. I see a lot of entrepreneurs, because there are so many opportunities for marketing too, that we can really overspend in that department. And I hate saying that, because people will come back and say, well, you don't believe in marketing. Well, I do believe in marketing,
Oh,
but
I agree with you completely. People are way overspending.
yeah, and
Yeah.
because we're trying everything, everybody's like, well, try it, so then you test Facebook ads for 6 months and throw a lot of money there and it didn't work. And then you throw money other places. And so I think that, of these days, the more opportunity, the better, but also the more opportunity there is to kind of take paths that maybe we don't want to take. So that's more of a business concept than a.
It is. Well, I think in the olden days, it cost a certain amount just to start a business. You know,
Yeah.
whether you had an asset-based business, you had to buy pipe, plant, property, and equipment, or even if you didn't, you had to have a business office, you know, because you didn't work out of your home. So you had this barrier, which actually served well. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
it was a barrier, but it served well because it made sure you had enough money before going into it. You had the infrastructure in place. You totally thought it out. You didn't just go, this afternoon I heard something and I'm going to drive around and sign this lease now and hire a bunch of people. You had this barrier. I think this quick to get in business, and then people sell a few widgets and then think they can multiply it by 20,000. I'll have people like 1 month they sold to their relatives and they go, there's a lot of demand. I'm going to take all the money in my house and put this in it because I could be. I'm like, you sold a few widgets to family. Let's get real here. Okay. But I'm exaggerating, but I'm kind of not, Michelle.
I know. And I get it. I am that person that, I can think of a business for everybody. And as soon as you tell me what you want to do, I'm like, my brain just goes into, I hear great ideas. I love ideas for business, but you do have to then sit down and really look at the idea and make sure it lives in reality to some extent. I also don't like that word so much, but it's true. I mean, you know, it's great to have a big vision, but it's also great to pay attention to those milestones along the way. And
Yes. I call them course corrections.
yeah.
If you are looking at what's happening and you do a course correction, you know, because one of the things I always say, and you know, some people get me, some people are like, I don't even know what she's talking about. But say at the end of the day, we have to face reality that we, as of right now, this could change tomorrow, but as of right now, we are in a 3D monopoly universe. Okay. That's where we are, right? We're in 3D, and we're playing Monopoly. You know, someday that could change. I could wake up tomorrow and go, oh, we have all transcended. But you know, right now it's 3D. You got to buy a quart of milk, right? So we have to understand the game board that
Yeah.
we're in, and reality isn't to take away the fun or the experience or rain on the parade, but it's to know what is the game board that we're on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the lines get a little muddled too between think big and dream big and
Yeah.
do big and like, you know, is it really fitting your life? I mean, is it working? Can it work? So you have to, and a lot of businesses have not been able to pay huge amounts for marketing at the beginning and have still made it. So then we have to get creative, you know.
Yeah, we do. And oh, I'm glad you said that because I wanted to, before we ended today, come back to some actual experience on what you're saying about marketing. So during, and this is a sad thing. I mean, I totally get why people do it, but I want to tell you something that because I see the amount of financials I see huge amounts of financials, ridiculous amounts, right? And unlike when I was a banker and saw a lot of numbers, I'm into therapy with the you know, business people,
Yeah.
financial analysis and looking at the numbers. So it's a different perspective during the pandemic, and I, you know, feel saddened to what was forced upon the companies. They had knee-jerk reactions to get as much social media paid, rightly so, right? And advertise as much as they can. So what, and then I was looking at the financials while they were applying for the loans, right? And
Mm.
afterwards. So many invested a lot of money in social media and achieved higher revenue at a discounted amount only to be more in debt. And many added more infrastructure to support the higher revenue amount. And so they got out of the pandemic and they found that they borrowed all this money. It did raise the revenue, but it didn't raise it compared to what it needed to be. And so they ended up with more revenue and less money at the end of the day, less ability to buy a quart of milk. So that is something I see where you really have to see where that is getting you in net profit, not revenue.
I know, I know. The profit part, that's where a lot of,
That
we
damn profit part.
yeah, I know. I mean, our metrics are usually, not, I mean, we have to watch our metrics. The revenue's not the necessarily the one to focus on in profit.
And, you know, people don't get that. A lot of times I hear they talk about the revenue, they go, "I made this money." I'm like, "No, you didn't make this money." And I've actually had people literally tell me, and I go, "Okay, let's walk through this. You got this from customers. Does that money stay in the bank account?" "No, it went out." "Where did it go out?" And, you know, I had to walk them through it. And so
Oh,
they get so blinded to the fact that net profit is what you get to keep, not the
right.
revenue. Totally.
Yeah.
Well,
I
fun,
know.
fun conversation. I want to pass it back to you for any lost thoughts, but I just want to say thank you for coming on. I'm not going to wait 2 years to have you back on. I believe that the discussion we just had is so important and it's so unique because we literally intertwined without distinction finance knowledge, business knowledge, and the mental and emotional connections to money and how they all impact together. I think this was a very unique conversation. The audience will be able to tell me how they feel, but I think we have really, in a lovely way, blended all of these key elements together. Your last comments and thoughts to the audience, Michelle?
Yeah, well, audience, I mean, you're doing the right thing by listening to the conversations. And I think one of the big missing pieces, I think you're exactly right. I think it needs to be more holistic and encompass these other things. I mean, that was the big aha moment for me when I thought all the practical knowledge was all I needed, and it's not. It's the same for food. Why don't we eat perfectly? We know how, we know what we could eat, but we don't do it every day. So but I also want to say the more money conversations you can have, money still is very taboo in terms of people opening up and talking about it. I'm sure you find that,
Yeah.
it's hard
Oh,
for
yeah.
people to give
Yeah.
you their P&Ls and have conversations. And the more we practice that, the more comfortable we get, um, the more we're not hiding anything and we're being more authentic and then we can change things. If we're always
Absolutely.
pretending everything's great, we're not changing anything that needs to be changed.
I love that if we're pretending everything's great, we're not changing anything that needs to be changed. And you know, there are so many things that you wrote that I actually wrote down and I was like, I've got this wording I'm going to use later on. So with that, Michelle, while I'm passing this to Sadie, take a look at the chat. I know I don't get to see it, but I see it. You got some great comments in the chat. I saw somebody say, I'm going to sign up. I saw those words. We have impacted people today. So I just wanted you to be able to just take a moment to see the beautiful comments in the chat. Sadie, was this not fascinating, interesting, and on cue with what needs to be heard?
Definitely for me, it's just like what I mean, like, I go with the comments as well, but it's like, yes, like how do you think about things? How do you perceive things? Like I said, a whole nother conversation just on that, but love it. As always, best shows that we have, Lori, best speakers.
I know, you know, we do. We definitely do. We are very gifted with the guests that we have on the show. So with that, Sadie, as always, guys, is going to stay later as she always does to keep the chat open. You can get Michelle's contact information and reach out to Michelle. If anything, write that letter and have that letter written back. I think that is a fascinating. I'm going to have to do it because I want to find out what money is going to tell me. That's the letter I want. I'm like, okay, money, write me a letter. I can take it. I can take it. Really tell me how you really feel about me. I just really am going to do that. I absolutely love that. Michelle, thank you so much for coming back on. We're going to have you back on again. This has been a delightful experience and conversation to have. So with that, guys, I always do because there's so much to talk about. So I have to say, first of all, frequent flyers, you've been here with me every single week, some of you for 3 years now. I appreciate you and I'm glad you're here. And if you are new, you never know what we're going to talk about on Small Biz Talk, but it's always relevant to what you're experiencing. So till next week, thank you for joining Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams, and I will see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Lori. All righty, guys. As you know, our frequent flyers, I will be hanging out, so don't worry. I know like you were so focused on the webinar itself that you're like, "Oh my God, what's been in the chat?" So I just dropped in the latest Lori webinars in there. That does take up a chunk of space there. So I just wanted to put that towards the end. I put in Michelle's information in there. I put in the SBDC contact. So if there's anything specifically that you need and you don't see, please let me know in the chat and I will drop that down. I'm just gonna put down how to contact Lori again in there, the past shows. So don't worry, I'm gonna put some more things in there. But as I said, I'm here. Don't worry. Let me know what you need.